All right.
All right, bro.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Ready? In 5, 4, 3.
Yo! Welcome to the Bub and Bob Show, where we talk about faith, culture, and America from a Christian worldview. I am Bub Coons. Behind the glass is the studious and always present Bob Matosian, scrutinizing every word I say. How you doing over there?
Good morning.
Yeah.
How are you?
As my cell phone actually calls you, call Bob Matosian.
Yeah, incorrect.
Yeah.
Incorrect.
Yeah.
So this is an exciting day. We're auditioning a new host.
Yeah, great.
Because
All the votes are going to come
he's
in.
probably going to do well.
Get rid of Bub. Get rid of Bub.
Yeah.
Get rid of Bub.
Yeah,
More
and
Bobby.
if
More Bobby.
Bub blushes a little bit, it's because he really likes this guy.
It's true. I do.
There's your intro.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
My guest today is the host of the 1 Minute Apologist. He's a great Christian guy I've been following for a couple of years. He is the author of a couple of books we're going to talk about. One is Doubting Toward Faith. The other one is one of my favorite, Does God Exist? And get this, 51, not 50, other compelling questions about God and the Bible. He's the coolest, I mean, literally, when Christian apologists were talking about him, he's the guy with the coolest hair. No way around that. This is the profound and proficient Bobby Conway. Look at this guy. I got to say, I mean, you're a true Californian look, and you pull it off really well. Welcome to the Bub and Bob Show.
Well, thank you. Bobby's glad to be on the Bub and Bob.
Yeah.
I mean, are we trying to just load up on the
B
bee
word?
thatcher? Yeah.
Let's do Bobby.
Welcome. You're a permanent fixture now.
Yes.
So we got 3 bees, but nobody could preserve the Robert. And my story was the whole deal is I couldn't go with Robert because I didn't like the Bert.
Yeah.
And then I did have an identity crisis at one stage and went Rob, and then I just dropped that, and then I couldn't do Bob because it sounded too round and oval.
Yes.
So you went Bub, I preserved Bobby, and then
And he went
went
Bob.
round and oval, but he's
he's
tall and lean.
He is. And Armenian
The thing
skin.
is, what we all have in common, it's Robert when they're looking for you, Bobby when they're bragging about you, and if they use your middle name, you're in big trouble.
Your host.
Right?
Yeah, Robert Michael. Yeah, so mine was growing up. My brother's a year older than me. He couldn't pronounce brother, so he started calling me Bubber. And I'm like, no way I'm going to be like a bubber, or be a verb or something.
Yeah.
It's they dropped it and called me Bubba. But then when I moved to California, I just had to be like Sting and Prince. You had to just cut it off. I'm Bub. Man.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And there's too many Bobs in the world, so I just stuck with Bub. So that's my story.
Now, speaking of Bubba, though, have you ever had a Bubba burger?
No, I've had bubblegum shrimp.
Burger. I like bubblegum shrimp,
So not bad. So
What about Bubba Hubba Bubba?
Oh, Hubba Bubba. Yeah. I've had Hubba Bubba. People used to call me at Coast Hills Bubbalicious.
Bubbalicious.
And I don't know, it's not, I don't know why, but it's stuck. A lot of my friends.
This show's going really well.
Hey, yes, where we talk about everything from the Christian worldview, including Hubba Bubba and Bubbalicious.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things we love to do is go back in time and talk about your journey toward Christ and stuff, because we think that there's a lot of people looking in and just wondering if their story matters, and could God use me? And I always say, if He can use me and my guest, He can use anyone. So we like to. I mean, I love to just go back and tell me about what it was like growing up. Did you grow up in a Christian family? Where did you grow up? And and then where and how you met Christ, or how we
How that came
near.
together.
Yeah.
So I grew up in California. I never heard the gospel till I was 19. So I didn't grow up in a Christian home. It was one of those situations where Dad grew up Catholic, Mom grew up Protestant, but I think it was just what they said. They got married. They couldn't decide on where to go to church.
Right.
And so, I was totally unchurched. I go to a Catholic church every now and then, with my grandparents, and I found it hard to connect with and relate to. And I can remember, they'd say, turn and shake hands, and everybody would be saying, peace be with you, peace be with you. But I thought they were saying, pleased to meet you. So I was walking around going, pleased to meet you.
Yeah. Either way, it works.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah. Which is the least favorite part of any service when I go to. I always find my way to the balcony because it's about to come up. I don't like the forced greeting.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I get that people do it and they want to break ice.
They do it.
Yeah.
But I had a hard time connecting. I was the guy that turned to alcohol and drugs at 15.
Wow, early.
And I was young doing that stuff. hated school, hated education. I was out in the parking lot rolling things instead
You
of
and Bob have a lot in common. And you guys,
Yes.
you should hang out after
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
and
it sounds
catch up
like
with your stories.
Wait,
As
you
if
look
I'm
familiar.
exempt. As if I'm exempt. I just never did the drugs part. That's all. That's the only difference.
yeah.
did the
That's the way it was. I was back in the LSD and all that stuff, just trying to find myself. I used to take LSD and say, I'm going to go find myself. And, God revealed himself to me, and then he revealed me to myself. I never knew who I was until I knew who God was. And that happened when I was playing college baseball at Saddleback Community College in
What
Mission
position?
Viejo. Pitcher.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, so pitcher. That was the only thing I had really going for me.
You
was
left-handed?
baseball. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, left-handed, and loved baseball. But yeah, just promiscuous, partying, collecting guilt, and just trying to figure out how to dispatch the guilt that I collected. My life was...
Did you actually feel guilty? Like you knew something was wrong? And
I
like,
did.
This is weird. I shouldn't be doing this, but who cares?
Absolutely.
And,
After I became a Christian, when I read Romans 2 about how God has written his moral law on us, it blew me away how much I resonated with that. I can remember being a teenager before I heard about Jesus, standing in our laundry room and asking an unknown God to me to forgive me for my sins. And the moral law was at work.
Across the... Was that any outside of...
I think that there would be the outside, the parental, like this is what's right, this is what's wrong. And it's crazy. I actually went to high school in Northern California, and think about how much it's changed. I graduated in 91. There was a time where the culture and the church, we kind of shared the same values. But now the culture has legalized things. And so now, just because something's legal, the culture assumes it's moral.
It's moral, yeah.
But yeah, I did. I had a lot of guilt going on, and I think I felt like I just used people. Like people to me, I hung out with them if they could help fulfill my hedonistic desires.
Kind of a means to an end.
Like if this girl is ready to party hard, if my friends are ready, I would ask my friends, are we gonna get jacked up
do
tonight?
This tonight or not?
Yeah, and if they were not fully committed to getting jacked up, then new friends.
Yeah.
Like I need, misery loves company, right? So I need to find the right crowd.
Yeah.
So that was going on like that. And then, at 19, a college teammate took me to hear Greg Laurie, and this was at the pastor. This is where Pastor Chuck Smith was back, kind of at the tail end of the Jesus movement, kind of kicking off in the 70s. I think early 90s. There were still some. And he was the pastor at Calvary Chapel Costa Mesa, and Greg Laurie would speak on Monday nights. And that's when I go out and I gave my life to Christ. And man, it was the beginning of just such an... I still struggled continuously with relapses and alcohol and trying to like make these... Because I lived according to my feelings my whole life. Yeah. And I don't know, Bob, I just felt like what I felt is what I did. And now all of a sudden I had the Bible. And I was trying to submit my feelings to the Bible, but that was so stinking hard.
It still is, to be quite
and
honest.
it still is,
really,
yes, I agree.
Yeah. But that, any brothers and sisters? Did you have?
Yeah, I have a younger brother from my parents, Tim, and then my dad was married before, and he had 3 kids that are older, but...
were they in the house when you were?
No. I mean, I was the oldest, the way that I grew up and
yeah.
everything. But I would see my half brothers and half sister from time to time.
Okay. Do you remember what Greg Laurie said? It just sparked, or were you kind of on the journey and your friend? Were you reluctant to go, or was your friend just like, "Hey, man, let's go," and you were like, "Okay."
Yeah, I was open. I was really open to going at that stage. I hated the thought of going to church, but I connected with my teammate, and I liked him, and I thought, man, this guy's, relatable. He definitely lived much more G-rated than I lived, but I was drawn to his contentment, and he had recently lost his younger brother to leukemia, and I saw him working through that, and I thought, how does that happen? So what I related to with Greg was he would talk about how he used to smoke dope, and I thought, okay, well, he's not any longer.
Right.
He would use a vernacular dude cool, bro stoked. He talked about Jesus. He was funny.
Yep.
And I just loved it. He just resonated with me in that way. I don't remember a particular passage.
Yep.
I just know I was trying to figure out, what do I do with my guilt and what's the purpose of my life? He told me Jesus could deal with my guilt, and Jesus came to give us life and life abundantly.
And that started. That was the start of the journey. And then
Yeah.
it's like that's so okay. So fast forward a little bit. You end up when did you become a pastor out of that?
Yeah.
And then I want to talk about how you even started or why you started the 1 Minute Apologist, because it's
how
an
that all came together.
awesome ministry. So I want to talk about
Thank you.
that a little bit.
So for about the first year and a half, I continued to struggle with drugs, alcohol, promiscuity after becoming a Christian. I went to Chico State in Northern California and took out a student loan, made it to class for about 5 weeks. I sold my car before I went, drank that away, showed up at Chico State, spent the student loan within no time on drinking and using. And I basically was in a situation where I probably made it to class for 4 or 5 weeks, and I wasn't going any longer. And I was just hitting what I would say would be a bottom for me.
Right.
The Holy Spirit, when you start getting convicted of your sin in a high level way, your bottom's going to come quicker. And I ended up in AA October 9th, 1994. And I would do over 400 meetings in my first year getting clean.
Wow.
And that whole process for me, I was coming alive. I was getting so excited about Jesus. And then I came
Were
back.
they preaching Jesus then, or was it still the higher power? Because it switched at one point.
No, they were doing, AA still does a higher power, Celebrate Recovery.
Right.
I would drop into it Saddleback.
Yes.
After Chico, I came back down here, was working at the Ritz-Carlton in Dana Point as a valet and as a bellman. And I acquired the nickname
Wonder if
the
you parked my
Reverend.
car. You're the Reverend. See, that's like my dad. My dad was known as the preacher, and he was like a handyman. He went around the thing. Everyone just called him the preacher. That's awesome. The Reverend.
I was the Reverend. And I thought, how does a guy
You probably parked my car once.
Well, I very
used to
likely
go to
could
the
have.
Ritz a lot,
And I might have slept in it. I worked graveyard shifts.
Drove it around.
And I go sleep in cars
awesome.
on
Good.
graveyard shift. And thankfully I didn't get snagged on that one.
So that's pretty amazing. So I mean, so the next step out of that was
there was a lot of life change happening, right? So for me to be called the Reverend, I was the kid that parents didn't want their children hanging out with, and now I'm being called the Reverend.
That's amazing.
And it was funny. I get in trouble for pulling up cars on 107.9 on K-Wave. People start complaining, who's doing that?
Hey.
They were worried about promoting me from valet to bellman because they didn't want me evangelizing the guests. So it was clearly leaking out of me. I ended up feeling a call to the ministry, a full-time call, and it actually happened at the Ritz-Carlton. I was valet parking a car, and I had these people telling me at Celebrate Recovery and different things like, man, I could see you being in the ministry. Because I take small groups so seriously. I'd memorize all kinds of verses, and I'd show up at small group, and I'd look to insert the verse I memorized, and people would be like, you really like this thing. I was hungry. And so I was parking a car one night, and on a vehicle in front of me, I noticed the license plate said MATT419. For some reason, it just was illuminated to me, so to speak. Not really, but I felt like God was saying, go look in your Bible at MATT 419, Matthew 419. Sprinted through that parking lot, open up my Bible, and the verse said, Matthew 419, come follow me, Jesus said, I'll make you fisher of men. And on that night, I laid on my back in the parking lot at about 2 a.m, where you pull the car up to Ritz-Carlton, and I just surrendered to go to the ministry, and that was kind of my so-called call. I didn't know you called it a call.
I can't even call that one so-called. I mean, that's like providential to the core, It
was amazing.
You're right. That's amazing.
It was amazing. Like one verse, I had been trying to figure out, asking God, am I supposed to be in the ministry? And that particular setup.
Amazing.
And I would move off to Arkansas. I had a buddy that was out there from high school. I wanted to change my people, places, and play things. Went out to Arkansas, ended up going to a Bible college out there. Didn't even know how to pick a Bible college. It was a little tiny, small Bible college. It was really legalistic and awkward for me. My wife and I got married, Heather. And
so you met her in Arkansas?
I did. I met her in Arkansas.
That's right across the river from where I grew up. I grew up in Memphis, and Little Rock's right on the other side. So it's like...
I drive up to... we go over to,
The rendezvous
Memphis all the
and-
time.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
rendezvous,
yeah.
the
The
cheese
river,
and
yeah.
I love the cheese platter and the
Oh, it's
sausage.
good stuff. Their rolls
With that little dashing of the red goodness that they
so
put
good.
on it.
They're so good.
Yeah.
The whole riverside, the whole river walk
Oh,
with
it's
the mud
cool.
island's pretty cool.
Yeah, and what's the hotel where you can see the
Peabody.
Yeah, the Peabody.
Yeah, with
Yes,
the ducks
I
walking
dig
down
the
there.
Peabody.
Yeah. I hung out. Side note: I hung out with Brian Johnson of AC/DC in the Peabody lobby in 1984.
You did.
Yeah.
Did you sing Back in Black?
Oh, of course, not nearly as well as he does. But anyway, side note: it has nothing to do with Christian apologetics.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, well,
Or
you
it might. Who knows? Back in Black could mean something else to someone else and draw them in like a license plate. Drew you. You never know.
you do never know how God's
Yeah.
going to work, man. That's for sure. So I end up at this little Bible college, and my wife and I are married, and man, that was a culture shock.
Yep.
And I was going out sharing the gospel with 50 to 100 people a week on the secular campus, and a lot of times by myself.
Campuses. That's amazing.
Yeah, just literally, I'd stand up on a bench and preach, and no one would listen.
Yeah, really. That's
But I was
gutsy.
so burdened for it.
I got to
you know?
connect you with my friend Steve Butwell. You guys are like the same, cut from the same cloth. He's just unafraid. He goes everywhere.
Yeah,
He just goes.
but
and just
now I'm
speaks.
scared. Like
Now
I
you're
don't.
scared?
Yeah, like I don't.
Yeah. Like you're going to lose something.
It's like I
You
think
have nothing to lose.
the church tamed me in some ways,
Oh,
right? Like
oh.
I just would read the Bible and see how they did it, and I'd start trying it out, and I didn't know that like, oh, these methods aren't the most effective
Yeah.
in this culture.
Yeah.
So in time, I would learn. Okay, so maybe there's better ways to go about it than standing on a bench.
Yeah.
And I got that, but I wasn't the guy out there like being obnoxious.
Yeah, being mean or
I was
cruel,
just
you're
passionately
just
wanting to
teaching. Yeah.
So my wife and I are newly married. She's going to the UCA, the secular
yeah.
campus, right? And she'd go to her science class, and people would be complaining, "Who's this weirdo out there preaching?"
great.
And she'd go, "Mom." She wouldn't say anything like, "Oh, that's actually my husband."
Don't worry about him. Let's just get
Yeah,
back.
don't
to it.
worry about him. But I would end up. But man, yeah, the church sort of like that's one of the dangers I think too. Like in some ways, we need to become aware of how can we be culturally effective, but in some ways, I think we can get tamed by the church, and because people are older, the younger zeal listens. But sometimes it's the older wisdom that's telling the younger zeal how to just lose their zeal.
Yeah, which you don't ever want to do. Yeah,
You don't
that's the
wanna
thing.
do, yeah.
But that seems to come with as you grow, right? Also because you have the cares of the world, you have everything hitting on you.
Yeah.
You know, and when you're young, in your mind, there's nothing to lose. Then you grow, have a family, have a house, have a car,
Exactly.
and you're like, I got a little, and that's what has a power to tame you as well. Now you're a little quieter. You're not quite as bold as you were, and so both those things. Yeah, I think preachers from the pulpit need to go let those young guys loose in their zeal, but
Right.
help them with their wisdom and knowledge, obviously.
Yes.
But it's like, build them up. You know, it's like wild at heart kind of thing.
Exactly.
I mean, don't ever lose it, man.
Exactly.
But, yeah.
So now I just handle snakes from the pulpit, and we kind of just do that thing, right?
Good. Yeah. Well, you're going to be stronger and wiser because and prove to everybody what a godly man you are because the snake didn't bite you.
Yeah, or let it bite you, and then just show that you're kind of immune to
I
the
didn't even
venom.
know it bit me. Yeah, the venom doesn't hurt me.
Yeah, right.
So how do you end up as a pastor of a church from there?
Yeah, so from there, I mean, I served as a staff evangelist. I ended up serving as a teaching pastor. Then I go off to Dallas Seminary and study, and it was there where I already had a vision to start a church, and I was just preparing to plant a church. I had a mentor in my life by the name of Robert Lewis. He was well known for developing the men's fraternity curriculum and raising a modern day knight.
Wow.
And he was inspirational in my life to just help me to get prepared for that.
Right.
Following seminary, we went to a 1-year residency at Fellowship Bible Church in Little Rock, where he was the lead guy. And then we ended up planting a church in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Okay.
And we went out there.
Far from home?
Far from home, far from home for sure. I feel like in a lot of ways I've always been a fish out of water in the South.
Right.
And I'm so glad to be back on the
yeah,
West Coast. I feel like I'm back. Isn't that funny? You can go away for 25 years, but it's kind of like where you grow up. That kind of sets the DNA for
I think
a
God
lot.
does something with us in geography. I just think there's even how He set up Israel and put the boundaries around it. I think when you think of those Jews returning home at one time, it's just going to feel because I have I have a call back to Texas all the time. Every time I go, it brings me peace that's different than every other place.
Yeah.
So something about where you grew up.
Yeah.
I mean, probably not to everyone. There's maybe people that never want to go back to where they grew up. But
Yeah.
for most people, I think you're kind of pulled back to your geography a little bit, and there's something that's sweet about going back and then going, oh, it
Yeah.
feels a little bit about home. So you're in North Carolina.
Yeah.
You're out of seminary.
Yep.
Was that, how long is a program? Is that is 4 or 6
Yeah,
years? Or was it,
Well, there's different ones, right? So you have like a Master of Arts
Yeah.
in Biblical Studies.
Right.
It's 2 years, and MDiv's 3 years,
Right.
a THM Master of Theology 4 years. So
Okay.
I did that one. I
Okay.
kind of had the Greek and the Hebrew
Okay.
and all the stuff where you want to
so
pull
are you
your
a
hair out.
doctor?
I am, yes.
Dr. Bobby Conway?
Yeah, well, I do have a doctorate of ministry
Okay.
in apologetics that I got under Norman Geisler.
Okay.
And then I'm about to finish up my second doctorate.
Wow.
It's a PhD, doctorate of philosophy
Okay.
in philosophy of religion from the University of Birmingham in England.
Wow.
So I'm just preparing to go defend my Viva, hopefully in the next few months in England.
Amazing. So
Yeah.
then that's the last step of that, and then you.
Yeah, my wife will not let me keep this up any longer. I've been
You're
in
finished
school.
with education. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Not that you
Yeah.
won't always learn, but as far as the paid for higher education.
And I'm sick to death of it.
I
Even
bet- I
right
bet.
now, trying to go and defend the Viva and prepare for it. I don't even hardly want to talk about my research. I've just been in it and living in it. 6 years, this PhD
That's a long time.
will have taken. But I'm thankful because my other degrees were from, evangelical schools.
Right.
And I really wanted to go get something from, a secular university. And, the Birmingham University, it's second behind Oxford
Wow.
in philosophy of religion. So it's very prestigious.
amazing.
Degree, and I'm excited because look,
Well,
my
congratulations.
story.
I mean, that's
Well, if
amazing.
I pass, right?
Do you have to fly there?
Yeah.
And present? And,
Yeah,
so, okay,
I'll
so-
fly
okay.
there, and I got to study under the two heads of the department, Yuji Nagasawa and David Cheatham.
Well, we're praying for that, and let us know that when you're going. We'll commit to even more prayer. For
That
sure.
would mean a lot. Yeah.
Does Dr. Bobby, does that work? Dr. Bobby?
Dr. Bobby sounds really
Dr.
weird,
Bobby,
right?
Dr. Bobby to the
You're going to have to go back to Robert.
Yeah, I think Dr. Conway.
Dr. Conway.
There you
That's
go.
good.
Once, but I still need to kind of stick with the Bobby because I've never wanted to be that stuffy type, you know,
Right.
and that's just part of maybe that's me as a kid and the few times I went to church knowing what that was like, and then seeing someone like Greg and resonating. I never wanted to. I look, as a pastor, I got more complaints about my dress style than anything else. Now, a lot of people connected because they thought, he's just normal.
Yeah.
I never wanted to try to be. In fact, in some ways, I feel like I've had to strive harder, to get as educated as possible,
to
just
be
to be
taken
taken seriously.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
I feel like I could have been done with my master's
Yeah.
degree and wore a suit and tie, so to speak, and been taken
Instantly,
seriously.
somehow.
Yeah, but it's and honestly, I don't even think I'm always taken seriously still, no matter what, because I've got this laid back, that California vibe.
Yeah.
But it's, for me, it's just, I want people to be able to connect with me. That's why I want non-believers.
Absolutely.
And if it's trying to connect with people who want to tell me that Christianity has to look like a suit and tie and speaking a certain formal language, well, that's fine. That's just not for me.
Yeah, well, and I think you present yourself well, and I think you're accomplishing that because you just got a style. That's okay to have a style. You got a great style. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm glad to know that when I like I told you before the show, I used to be younger thinking, boy, when I turn 40, does that mean I have to wear Porch, Stalkers, and what do they call Boobockers or whatever?
Sure.
I'm fine if that's what people want to wear. I
ain't gonna do it.
But I would just as some people who would feel comfortable in that would feel awkward.
Doing the other thing.
Check out these bad boys.
Well, look at that.
Look, okay. How many people would want to wear?
Not many people, but before the show, my wife saw shoes and said, "I had a pair of shoes like that too." So and she did. She rocked them well too. So.
My wife hates those. She says you look like a clown. I'm like, well, I like them. I'm also a 4 on the Enneagram.
Okay.
And that means you like to express yourself and you like to be unique. And see, and I love that kind of stuff because, you were mentioning before about how there's been so many different types of people that you've interacted with. And I think it was before the program.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And, the Enneagram stuff, it's phenomenal because when we can see that people are just different.
Yeah.
And, that's part of what I'm passionate about in
Absolutely.
ministry is taking I love to see a bunch of different people
Yes.
and be able to work together
Yeah.
instead of making everyone like me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what iron sharpening iron is. I
Yeah.
wouldn't just sharpen you only if I told you and agreed with everything you said. The sharpening part and the conflict comes with two believers winsomely respecting one another, sharing their views, and getting someplace, like whether it
Absolutely.
moves you along. So I like that about this. So okay, so you end up being a pastor. And how long did you do that? And,
Over 14 years as a lead pastor.
and how hard was that?
It was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
I bet.
It was brutal. Yeah. I honestly, looking back on it, I didn't like it very much.
Yeah.
I loved the body at large. The people, the body at large was very good to me. I liked the idea of starting things. I'm an entrepreneur, but it was just so difficult. So many people come with their different backgrounds. They have ideas about what church is supposed to look like.
Right.
I also think in some ways, like my wife was from the South. You know, we ended up planting in the South.
Yeah.
Culturally, I'm not sure it was the best fit for me. You know,
The wrong place to plant,
Yes.
but the right thing.
yes,
Yeah.
and I love North Carolina, and I love the people there. You know, I just found it agonizing at times with the expectations, and you know, I tried to create a church like an AA culture,
Right.
and so I just lay my heart out there and just do that so much. At times, that would shoot me in the foot, though, because you'd almost get people worried about you.
Right.
And in some ways, it's like it's good to be vulnerable, it's good to be transparent, but when you're just so on the table about everything with those who you're leading with, they can't always handle it.
Especially as the quote unquote leader, you know,
Yeah.
expositing scripture and like, what's wrong with this guy? Why
what's wrong with this guy?
Why isn't he happy? Or like, you know, whatever
Exactly.
it is. Like, hey, I'm just trying
So
to share.
you get too open and real with your direct leadership, they're going to feel tempted to manage you. They're not going to know,
good
what's
advice.
wrong? They're going to start freaking out and start panicking. And what I was really trying to do is just model vulnerability, that life's hard, that, you know what, I'm having a hard time parenting, or my wife's driving me crazy, or I'm feeling a lot of crazy anxiety, or man, some doubts are really getting in my head right now. And the reality is I just think we all struggle as people. And I felt like, and still to this day feel like transparency is my survival medicine.
Okay.
But I do think contextually that a lead pastor needs to find people that can handle it. Yeah. And I don't know that it's always going to be their elder team.
Sure.
I think
or
that
if
they
it's
need
gonna
to find
be that
their,
type of person that does it. I mean, because that would be tough. I mean, you are definitely, as far as all the pastors I know, more expressive and have a more emotional side. Not that they're not emotional, but expresses emotions more than other people. And I can see how people would get scared of that. You know, and like, so it's just
hard.
14 years of that though, man.
Yeah.
All the time, I'm sure you learn tons about yourself and about, you know, the body of Christ and all that other stuff. It's like, did you have kids during that time?
Yeah. My son, now Dawson is 18. He'll be 19 in a few weeks. He lives in Hollywood. He's pursuing an acting career. Both my kids are real creative types. Yeah. My daughter Haley, she's 20, be 21 in a few months here. She's a gifted vocalist. She led worship since she was 15 in the church. And she's living with us again. Okay. We empty nest her. She came back home for a little bit. And we're so thankful for that. Yeah. My wife and I now, we've been married for 23 years. She's been my girl for 25 years. So, yeah, we got 2 adult children.
Amazing. Yeah.
And the kids too, you know, coming out of their dad as a lead pastor, it's been healthy for the family to pull out of that.
I bet. I was about to ask, is your wife like so stoked too? Like, we did it. We serve God.
I was telling her the last several years, it's killing me.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was killing me because God had something else for me.
Yeah.
And I think that some people can really deal with it better. Mm-hmm. It takes a ton of EQ. To be a lead pastor. And I think for me, just the emotional thing, I'm still just trying to grow in emotional health. I really am. I've fought anxiety my whole life, depression hardcore in my 40s. And I just feel like that. I think people that are, I'm very left brain, like the logical, analytical, but I'm incredibly right brain. Yeah. And what can be so difficult is in the church, I was surrounded by a lot of left brain leaders. Yeah. And it's difficult for the left brain type to really, hey, they just don't worry about it. Just don't feel this.
Stop
Just
it.
don't do that.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not that
Yeah,
easy.
I wish.
And and a lot of times it looked like, oh, you're being sinful because you're worried all the time. Or whatever. I go, I'm just really right-brained. And if I could just turn that off and be really logical all the time. And so what happens, I feel things deeply. I feel my relationships deeply. I feel my books deeply.
Yeah.
Like when I read my Bible, I feel those passages.
Yeah.
And when I struggled with the season of doubt that I went through as a pastor, it was horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it took me to dark spots because I feel, and at times I wish I didn't. Like emotions are that blessed curse, right?
Yeah.
So
I watched the interview with David Wood, right? And he's like a quote unquote psychopath pastor guy, and like, man, he just like I feel no guilt.
Yeah.
I don't. People laugh. I'm not laughing. This guy's crying. I'm like, why are you? It's like the Terminator. What's happening to your eyes?
Yes.
It's like why are you crying? And there are people that are different. There are people that he calls it somewhat of a mental illness, right? A dysfunction.
Absolutely.
It's a deprivation of what he wishes he had from everyone else. But I think the church needs to be careful about those types of things that are chemically in people, how they're made. And you can't just go, well, God says don't be anxious, so you're sinning if you're anxious, and that's not really what He says. Even He says that He's there during your anxiousness, and He'll give you peace and guard your heart. Yeah. But those kind of pithy, glib phrases that we throw out, and we expect you to be happy, controlled, sinless, anxiety free. You're my pastor. It's like, oh, come on, man, I'm a human being first, right? I'm a human made in God's image, and I got flaws and quibbles just like everybody else, and some people decide to express those and share them with everyone, and some people go, as pastors, none of their business really. And I guess that can be a tough thing for a guy who's there.
I literally had the leadership at one time say, Bobby, you're kind of like this, and you're always that way, and we need you to be more like this, and we're gonna be praying for you to be that way. And I was like, man, that's a lot of pressure. I can hear Bob cracking up in the background.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I mean,
well, and I
tell
said,
my wife to close the cabinets.
Yeah.
And she can't even remember to close the cat. I mean, it's like, and that's just in her nature. She just, when she cooks, I go around and I close it all for 20 something years, been closing cabinets. I don't get mad anymore. Like, I obviously you don't think the same way I do when everything needs to be closed and, blocked off. I can't pray for you to close cabinets better. It's a very interesting thing.
I do want to be less of that, but I said, so you're saying you want me to be like you? Yeah. Because that's why you're here to help. But it's a lot when people can't relate. Yeah. To that, and so I get it, and all that stuff just made me just not feel safe any longer, and so I my hat's off to people who are have high EQ, but see, sometimes high EQ isn't just because somebody's super spiritual. It just means that they're chemically more balanced out. They're not. They get the right amount of serotonin. They get the right amount of dopamine.
Exactly.
So I feel like I just want to lay my heart out there to those who suffer and struggle. And I can tell you honestly, it took a relapse for me to realize I've got to get the heck out of this role.
Okay, well, let's jump into that a bit and talk about doubting toward faith. Because I was now you're teaching this class now on Frank Turek's thing, right? Like
I do stuff with Frank and lots of different things that we do with CIA with them and stuff. But so while I was a pastor, I was struggling with doubt, but it wasn't because I was looking for doubts. I wasn't trying to be like this emergent church guy celebrating doubt. I was reading the toughest arguments against Christianity, and I couldn't process all the different books I was reading in the questions fast enough. So what was happening is I was collecting more questions that I had time to find good, solid answers for. People say, oh, well, you need to read this book to deal with that doubt. Okay, well, I would read that book, and then I'd learn 10 other books I need to read. So
never ends.
I had to renegotiate my faith stance, and it had to look different than just trying to get all my questions answered. I had to learn how to live with unanswered questions and find that tension. But between just all of my apologetic and philosophical studies and leading a church and getting really busy and going through some tough parenting times and just all of that mounting up, I found myself in a season where I just was like, I wonder if I could drink again. I hadn't had a sip of alcohol in almost 23 years. And this was at this time, I don't know, 23 years ago, or 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago from now. And I thought maybe I could just enjoy that. And I thought
maybe it'll calm me down.
Yeah,
Glass of wine at
exactly.
night. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
My wife enjoys a glass of wine. I pour it for her.
Yeah, okay.
The leaders in the church, they all drink, moderately.
Yeah.
So I thought maybe I could just join them.
Yeah.
And maybe I was just young and dumb. Well, it really got in my head, and I tried it. And within 6 months, I was back in AA. It was obsessing on it constantly when I wasn't drinking. And then when I would, I could not hardly just bear to stop, and it took everything out of me. Well, eventually I had a real mess up, and just completely blew it.
Yeah.
And
who came alongside of you?
the sad thing is the church, the leadership didn't.
Okay.
That was what was so painful.
Yeah.
I can honestly say we were quarantined. You have one pastor say, "Well, I can't meet with you yet because I'm not ready to deal with your sin." It was horrible for my family to see it. Yeah. There wasn't reaching out. There wasn't care. It was more like, "Oh, we got to let the body know, and we got to do this." And I was like, "Man, I just had a relapse. I'm feeling vulnerable. I'm trying to be real with you guys. Well, let's just let the whole community know."
Little wisdom would be nice here.
Well, it'd be just some safety, And I said, I felt like absolutely I want to share this, but can I just have a little space? Right. And it's only by God's grace that He protected me, and I haven't touched anything.
Yeah. Do you tend to go
alcohol?
Do you tend to go inward, or do you get closer with your wife, or further away when those things happen? Does this bring you really
This brought
tight?
my wife and I very close because we both felt really abandoned by a lot of our deep friends, and I get it. Like, I feel bad because yes, we let them down, and I did share with this flock and said, "Look, I'm really sorry."
Sure.
And I felt horrible. But I would have preferred someone come along and say, "Man, I can't imagine what you must be feeling had you had 23 years without a drink, and then to kind of try this trial and error team, and then have this. What happened?
Like, what happened?
How can we help you?
Why did it? Yeah.
But they're like, we're not. This isn't about you. We're not here to protect you. We have to protect the flock, and you need to tell the flock. Yeah. And we're like, we get that. We want to. Yes. I'm a very vulnerable guy. But I was now no longer feeling safe, and I felt like, man, I really need to step away from this place. Yeah. And the body at large was amazing. I mean, they gave us standing ovations, loved us. It was incredible. Yeah. But
because you're not defined by that moment, you're defined really by the fruit of the 14 years that you did. If there's a couple of moments in there, and you get to take a snapshot, we're all doomed. We're all useless and go. That's you. And that 1 second, I'm done. Yeah.
Exactly.
So that can be scary. I think churches do that a lot. They defend the flock. They get a little freaked out. I've been through a few of these in churches and watching some of them, seeing some of them doing beautifully, really well. And it's always when they take time and care for that person. Yeah. The ones that want to go protect and already have maybe even an agenda of the next steps. It gets crazy. Again, human people inside of a church.
I've known lots of stories, man, of churches, and I get it. Like, there's always fault, right, on both sides. Sure. And I have acknowledged, like, man, I hate that my doubts, or I hate that, just the season of that testing it out. But I wasn't like when I was a kid, like just wanting to go and party hard. Right. I was truly just looking for a way to take the edge off in a hard season. And really, what's been great is we've discovered God's grace. And we've recognized the need to transition out, and we're so thankful for the body at large. I do think that there's so much we could share with church leadership on how to handle people in tough times. What's that?
Maybe your next book is.
Yeah. I've got a buddy and I have talked about doing something as it relates to leadership and stuff like that.
I read Doubting Toward Faith, and then I heard you on, like, I think, Cross-Examine, which is now I don't have enough faith to be an atheist podcast thing, and I thought it was amazing. I think doubt, is when you doubt, when you have a legitimate doubt and you're not searching for doubts, kind of like you said, they can really reshape your soul and broaden your knowledge and wisdom, because there are things that only the infinite God will know, and it's not yours to know everything. And I think if we had peace with that, and we don't think we have answers to everything, then we can be a much more effective evangelist. And so, what's the heart behind why you wrote that, and what was one of your biggest doubts that you hit you hard and made you go, no, I got to rethink this?
Yeah, I think the heart behind the book is kind of the heart behind why I do ministry in general. Like, I look at myself as a guy that I'm not here to say, look at how I've done it, as much as I'm here to say, look at how God has been gracious to me in spite of having done it.
Yeah.
And I know what it's like to be so uneducated, I couldn't even pass test to get in the United States military. I failed the ASVAB 3 times.
Okay.
But then God would meet me in my weakness. And then, with the first doctorate to graduate with highest honors, and now about to graduate in the second one, it's His grace. Yeah. I've known what it's like to struggle with communication in my marriage, and my wife and I have lots of intense fellowship. But then He puts me on Family Life's Weekend to Remember, and we travel around the country, and we minister out of that. Yeah. I know what it's like to struggle with anxiety and depression, and I try to minister out of that. The doubts, I think He just allowed me to go through that so that I could write something to help people. And now I'm really thrilled to be able to help so many people that struggle with doubts. And what I learned in this season of doubt is I really fear that the church that people become a part of can often set them up for future crisis of faith. Because what you've got is basically all denominations are just different sized boxes that tell you how large or small Christianity is. Right. If you get put in too small of a box, what can happen is you get saved on a Wednesday, you sign up for your membership class on Sunday. You didn't even know who Jesus was on Wednesday, but now on Sunday you're signing off on, I believe in the Trinity, I believe in inerrancy, I believe in And then what happens is I'm in a young earther, I'm a KJV only, or whatever. Well, if you're in a really tight, constraining movement, well, if you're a thinker or you're a creative type, you're going to bump against that box you've been put in.
Absolutely.
And then you're going to feel bad, like, wow, maybe I'm not a young earther, or maybe I'm not a pre-tribber. And now you start thinking, well, my only option is to leave Christianity, because you don't realize there's bigger sized boxes to go into.
Sure. Right. And you don't want to be divisive and ruin it for everybody else. So all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I don't belong.
Yes.
Right? And that belonging goes, I guess I got to step out, instead of there's other places and other communities.
Absolutely.
Even if your church, your local church is there, you still can have a small group and a fellowship outside of that brought, that's where the real stuff kind of happens, so to speak. But
yeah. So what I realized is, instead of like trying to get people to, indoctrinate them immediately, well, the first book of the New Testament probably wasn't even written until about 80, 48, 49. That means the church was blowing up without even the New Testament. And you read Acts chapter 2, we love that passage. Yep. Well, how was the church exploding? That church in Acts 2 that we so loved, they weren't fighting about all the stuff we are. No. They didn't even have the New Testament. So when you see Acts chapter 2, it's blowing up on Great Commandment, Great Commission, loving God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, love your neighbor yourself, and then celebrating the gospel. Yep. So for me, I had to renegotiate my faith stance, and I realized I was complicating the heck out of everything, trying to figure out my system. It's like, I need to love God, love people, celebrate the gospel. And then instead of trying to make people feel like, commit to this position, I want people to understand how to enjoy learning and realize there's various positions. Yes. Enjoy learning. Because if you try to get people to commit to all of your positions, they're going to read another book that's going to counter it, and then they're going to freak out and panic down the road. Yep. So I think that's what I got out of my doubts, is to be able to say, look, we need a box. Without a box, without borders, you fall into heresy. Yep. But I do say some people want to be as conservative as they can be about their conservatism. I want to be as liberal as I can be about my conservatism without slipping into heresy. Yep. Because when you're as conservative as you can be about your conservatism, you'll inevitably alienate some. Yep. But when you are as liberal as you can be about your conservatism, you will be welcoming. And I would rather feel the tensions of people holding different views and welcoming them than preaching to the choir and alienating people who are really in.
Yeah, that's a really good advice. That's and I think it was hurt. I reiterate this stuff all in my mind. You get listening to other pastors or something, driving in the car, and every time someone says this, it wakes me up again. We spend so much time in the weeds, or what Chuck Missler used to say, we're so busy about doing God's work that we're never with God. It's more like, okay, you're getting all this stuff. Remember, Jesus is our focus. Christ is our focus. Absolutely. Salvation is our focus. We agree on these things, right? That he lived and died for us, and he resurrected. He's the Son of God. focus on Jesus and the hope of heaven. This is the real stuff, right? And we're bickering all about this. So many secondary issues I think are important for us to figure out and work together. But man, I tend to get into the weeds and go, no, why have I just judged that person like that instead of remember that he needs the grace of Christ and we're all sinners saved by faith, saved by grace. And that's what I hear you saying. You know, you don't want to preach heresy, but remember our first love.
Yeah.
Our first love, please. It's Christ. It's like, let's put him and let's not get in the weeds about certain things. Obviously, you do want to fight heresy and you want to teach right, but to me, every time I hear that, it's a reminder. I didn't do that today. It was really more about my apologetic, or really more about my knowledge, or really, thinking I'm smart instead of going, no, wait a second. This is about Jesus. I just introduce this person to Jesus. Don't get in a fight with them, or try to argue them, or whatever. I mean, anyway. So from which came first was because one of the books that I really liked reading, a couple things. I want to get into the 1 Minute Apologist and get the whole does God exist thing.
Yeah.
You're really good at just these quick answers. What made you start thinking of that and going, hey, you know what? Someone just needs to go in. They don't need a 400-page book on this topic.
Yeah.
They want to. They can go there. But man, you've gotten so good at these question, answer, 2 pages, or a 2-minute video or 1-minute video.
Sure.
And I love that style. So tell me what started all that and what made you want to do that?
In a lot of ways, I think back to as an early Christian, I was very curious and eager. And anytime I got around a Christian that had been walking with Jesus for any time, I was so hungry. Like I was the new believer that was asking tons of questions. So I was very intellectually curious. I would love and cut my teeth on listening to like Hank Hanegraaff's The Bible Answer Man.
Fantastic.
To Every Man an Answer back in the day, which is now the pastor's perspective. And so it's just God and his grace that even has me on the pastor's perspective, which is a call-in program, doing the Q&A. So I think I've always just loved that. When I walk in a bookstore, I want to know the answers to things. But while that trained me and prepared me to do apologetics and to do the 1 Minute Apologist and to do some of these things, it also was the thing that became an obsession. Because see, when an alcoholic quits drinking, he's still an alcoholic. My addict brain is always there.
Still craving it in a sense or whatever.
Like someone say, oh, you're not, it's not always once an alcoholic. Well, I know what it's like to go almost 23 years and I'm telling you.
And then you're still.
Like, I don't understand what it is about that liquid, but my brain and that liquid don't match. But I'm obsessed about everything I do in life. Like anything I do is just going to be in the extremes. And so I started making my relationship about finding the right answer. And I lost my love. And I was dried out. And that was part of the way of finding my faith and my joy is returning to that again. And that's where, like, I failed as a pastor at times where I go, man, I lost my heart at times. And I can genuinely say that leadership would see some of that. And in fairness to them, I needed that romance in my heart again as well. And that certainly helped. So the 1 Minute Apologist thing, that just came as an idea. I was popping popcorn one night with our worship pastor. I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do a YouTube program where we're answering questions? Had no idea what it would grow into. And just started doing these questions. I would interview people. I'd be scared to death when I was interviewing these people. I think, man, what's going on? I'm talking to this person, and this is so-and-so, and then they're talking, and I'm like, and I don't even know what they're saying. I'm just feeling my anxiety.
Do you have another question?
What's the next question? Well, the good news is I wasn't doing what you were doing, but William Lane Craig, though, we would fly him out, and I did do a 8-part series with his book, On Guard, a DVD.
Yeah, I remember.
And he says, Bobby, if you're going to interview me, you're going to need to know this stuff like the back of your hand. And I thought, no pressure, Bill. No pressure.
Even if I read it, I wouldn't know.
There's no more intimidating philosopher to be with than him. He's just an erudite. But he's also very warm and humble. Awesome. And I love Dr. Craig.
He's great.
And he came in and and I know what that's like to do that. And over time, I would just get a lot more comfortable with it. And they're just people, and now a lot of these people are my great friends now, and I just love them so much.
That's what it seems like when I watch it. It's like it's not just you knew of them, but a lot of them you're close to. I had one question that I always wanted to ask, and maybe it's just for simplicity's sake. Why is it always black and white?
just for creative purposes.
Okay.
We really wanted to be able to recognize that a lot of people aren't going to listen to apologetics. They're not going to be into it. And so somebody that's maybe more artistic and they like design and all that, maybe that would be just a way of reaching them. So we use, the cool music and the black and white and just aesthetics. And I'm somebody that is passionate about aesthetics and art.
We have a very specific brand, which I love, and I'm glad that you just stuck with the black and white thing. I was just asking. We do a lot of, because this is in color, there's a lot of color correction. I thought maybe it was just like, dude, just make it black and white because to dial all this stuff in. But I love that it was a creative choice, and some of these issues are black and white. So I kind of like this fits really well.
Oh, that's good.
But what is with I love that it's quick. Was that, that's on purpose too, because you don't think, most people aren't going to dive into these subjects, but, especially if they're cultural things like, is homosexuality wrong?
Yeah.
Even did one crazy enough on masturbation. It's like, these are real issues being brought up in culture and we need to have the Christian point of view. You're not going to write a whole book about that. Yeah. So it's like, let me just give, a reasonable position from the Christian worldview. And you're finding that to be, I'm finding it to be, when I look in and see your numbers, it's incredibly effective. It's.
I hope so. We're thankful for the opportunity. It's we've had over 1,000 videos.
That's amazing. That is good work.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. We're really
stuck with
thrilled.
It. Yeah.
So we got that going on. Now we're going to be doing weekly YouTube live with my audience, which I'm really excited about because for all those years I haven't been engaging my subscribers.
Yeah.
And now I'm doing that. And so like every Wednesday, subscribers can go.
People will know it'll be like a premiere thing, and they'll come and you'll
Absolutely.
spend how long will that be?
That's about an hour. On Wednesday we're going to be having tomorrow Michael Jones. I know you probably want me to say on Wednesday, so I don't date your program.
That's all right. We're dated. That's all right.
We're dated.
Okay. You say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not
We'll
going to edit
bleep you
that.
if we don't like it. We'll just bleep it.
And we're going to leave that in because that makes it look like a behind-the-scene thing.
Okay. Well, good.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Yeah.
So this week we're having Michael Jones from Inspiring Philosophy. He's got over 130,000 subscribers.
Nice.
We're going to have him on. We're going to have David Wood, who's got over 400,000 subscribers on. We're going to have special guests on Wednesdays. That's the next move. I'm actually getting together with some YouTubers.
Okay.
And together we've got over 1 million subscribers, and we're going to be spending a week in South Carolina at Key Island. Okay. And we're going to be figuring out how to constantly have each other on as guests and be pushing each other's stuff because we really feel like YouTube is the way to grow our platforms in the future.
I'll help in any way I can.
Absolutely. It'd be great.
So that's tell us how we can find you, all your stuff, and what you're doing. So is this new show every Wednesday? You're going to release something every Wednesday, or is it seasonal, or is it like, dude, you're going and doing?
We just started that, but I would say if they subscribe to our YouTube channel, 1 Minute Apologist, what can happen is they'll get alerts, and we're going to be doing once to twice a week. Okay. They'll be able to go live with me.
That's awesome.
They can go over to 1minuteapologist.com and also become part of our team there. Yep. And we have subscriptions and everything else where they could be a part of our team and they get material and all of that stuff. So we'd love anybody to go and like our page, subscribe to our page.
I'll be there. I'll be
liking it. Why don't we take this opportunity to cut away to one of Bobby's pieces?
Yeah, let's do that now. Let's
take a look at this.
The best definition of grace that I've ever heard is GRACE, God's riches at Christ's expense. What Christ accomplished on the cross was the ability for us to experience His unconditional grace. And grace is not something that just saves us. It's something that every day we go back to the cross and we remember that we have a rich resource in Jesus through a relationship with Him. That at the cross, He tells us through that great statement that my grace will always be with you. And so whenever we experience a moral failure, we can turn to the cross to remember that Jesus uttered, God forgive them, they know not what they do, that we will be with Him in paradise, and that He does love us enough to lay down His life for us. It's the great exchange, His life for our life, His grace for something we never deserved. On the cross, He was treated like a sinner so that He could gracefully treat us forever like saints.
Well, there you go. There you got an idea of what he does. There's different types of these throughout his channel. So check it out. It's really, really good stuff. We do this thing at the end we call One Thing in 1 Minute.
Yeah.
So we just ask you to look at that camera and say, if there's one thing that you have to say to the people watching, it would be this. And just so look there and go, here's the one thing I'd like to tell you.
All right. Wherever you are in your journey, what I have come to love so much about God is his grace. You're saved by grace, and you'll spend the rest of your life trying to figure it out. And when you listen to different people on this particular program about stories, which is so great that Bob and Bub are doing together, it's this. Ask yourself what your story is. Ask yourself what your theme is. My theme is I'm a train wreck of an individual whom God just has spent his life by grace keeping me on the tracks. And without him, I would have been off the tracks a long time ago. And I am passionate about taking whatever my weaknesses are so that God could be seen as strong and walking with him. And that's kind of my story. That's my apologetic, that God can use the weak things of the world. Whatever it is that's your story today, maybe it's you've never come to know Jesus, that's where it begins. Place your faith in the Lord Jesus Christ. On the cross, he took all of our sin and our weaknesses, and he died there for us. And he will send his Spirit into you and strengthen you to live a life that is way more than you can ever imagine living apart from him.
Amen.
Fantastic.
Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Bobby Conway.
Dude, it was so great to be with you, Bob. Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
See you guys next time. Adios.
Peace out.